right.
With the first pick,
Welcome to the Fantasy Podcast, Fantasy Rant Podcast. Messed it up already. I am Dan Baker, accompanied by my fellow co-hosts Evan Gooding and Mason Beck. Here we will discuss everything fantasy football, trades, lineup decisions, mock drafts, and more here on Fantasy Rant. On today's episode, we will cover news around the league and dive into our Dynasty wide receiver rankings. But before we dive into the news, I'd like to say thank you to everyone tuning into this Stadium Rant original. If you like our content, you should subscribe to our free newsletter, which will include exclusive interviews, articles of the week, and more. You can sign up at StadiumRant.com. All right, Mason, what do we got for the news?
All right, guys, starts off with our first one. First piece of news that actually dropped today was we learned that Dalvin Cook has reportedly been offered a contract by the Dolphins. Well, we don't know any details of the contract yet. It's the first one that's been made real public as a serious report of one. We've seen plenty of other teams interested, such as the Broncos, Jets, Patriots. When you have a running back like that, there's going to be plenty of teams going after it. But Dolphins seem to be the real contender right now. Just how do you guys think that would affect Dalvin Cook's value, all that sort of stuff?
Evan, you want to take it first?
Yeah. I mean, I love Dalvin Cook. He's done great things in the NFL. And I think it's a great decision for Miami to bring him in if they do choose to do so. Personally, though, I hate it. I want to see Devin Achane, what he could do. And I feel like if they bring in Cook, we're not going to be able to see that. But that's
right. I agree. I think Cook would be a great fit for the Miami offense, and it would murder everybody who took Devin Achane in the back of the first and already in their dynasty rookie drafts. I think Achane, I didn't see his value as an undersized running back anywhere else other than Miami. Miami's a perfect scheme in Mike McDaniel's offense. He knows how to use fast players, and if there was to be a relay race for any team, Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, Devin Achane, probably the top three of everybody in the NFL. They have blazing speed up and down the lineup. But Dalvin Cook, unarguably a much better running back. He would easily have a 1,000-yard season, probably creep upwards towards 1,300 yards at least, even if they did decide to share that backfield.
Okay. They even have Mostert for the speed, too. I forgot about him.
Right. Also, probably another guy that add to the four-man relay race there.
I think it's honestly the perfect spot for him fantasy-wise. I think it ruins a lot of my rookie drafts, like you said, Dan. But I think it's a great addition to the team, too, not even just fantasy-wise. I think he'll get a lot of looks still from the backfield because they got Tyreek and, Waddle as their speed guys. They're going to be their downfield. But, that little check down is going to help a lot when you got deep coverage on two speedsters. So I think
you're absolutely right with that, too. Yeah, Dalvin Cook offers some receiving prowess, too, definitely more so than Wilson, Mostert, or Achane. So having both Tyreek and Jalen Waddle taking the top off of defenses, and then having the threat of, they have cover three. They're running deep coverage. Check it down to Dalvin Cook. He'll pick up 5 to 10. It's going to spread defenses thin.
Yeah. All
right, what we got up next?
All right, so for another thing that dropped today is ESPN's, I might butcher this name, but Rob Demovsky reported that Jordan Love's number one go-to in offseason has been Romeo Doubs, not Christian Watson, but instead the late round pick.
Not to give any spoilers, but this agrees with my rankings. I not too big on Christian Watson after Aaron Rodgers departs. I think that Aaron Rodgers really makes a player like Christian Watson, who is not a clean route runner. I think he has trouble separating on his own despite his speed. But when Aaron Rodgers is dropping it into a half-foot window 40 yards down the field, those types of things get covered up. So I like this. I think Romeo Doubs is a much cleaner route runner, and that's one of the things I look for in a successful wide receiver and a guy that I'm taking on my team rather than just raw athleticism.
I could definitely see a world where he definitely becomes Jordan Love's go-to guy, but I can't see a world where he produces more than Christian Watson. Christian Watson is just a yards after catch monster. He's got the perfect prototype for what you would want to see out of a wide receiver one, and those are just undeniable facts that I can't seem to look past for him.
Undeniable facts.
I could honestly see Dobbs evolving into that guy that gets high volume in targets, but I don't think he's ever going to really be that true big play guy. Like, I think Watson will still always be that team's big play guy. So, if you're in a league with those bonuses and stuff, like, the 50-plus yard bonuses, Watson 100% every time, I think, will be the pick there. But, I mean, hey, those little short targets that Dobbs, I think, would be getting and, just high volume is what wins games for you. So.
No, that's absolutely true. Christian Watson undeniably can take a little hole and turn it into a 40, 50-yard play with that speed. You can't catch him. So there is always the upside of searching for somebody. And then the thought process of he can work on his route running. He's with an NFL team. They have coaches to teach him these things. And he can develop into a better wide receiver, but we just haven't seen the clean routes in college or the NFL yet. So I do agree with you that I don't think he overtakes. Romeo Doubs is not going to now jump over Christian Watson because of a little news blurb like this. But I do like Romeo Doubs as a sleeper in Dynasty.
Yeah, for his value, he's an incredible player for his value right now to have on your team.
Yeah,
I think people who drafted him late last year could be feeling good.
Absolutely. I don't know about late though. I think in a couple of our dynasty leagues, he went in the second round of rookie picks.
He did.
That hype,
which turns out to be worth it at this point. But
right? I mean, if you have Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback, a lot of times the hype can get out of control, as we're seeing with Garrett Wilson. Another spoiler here, but
yeah, right.
All right, what else we got here?
All right, so for the next thing today, we got reports that Purdy has gone down to Jacksonville and will finally be throwing again and starting his recovery program, which leads to the question again of course, the Niners. We're going to always have our QB controversy going into week one. So what do you guys think about that? Like Lance, Purdy, I mean, it's obviously now going to start a lot more of the debate on who's going to be week one, because before it was kind of when's he going to play?
Right. I will be honest. I had Lance heading into this offseason as a starter. I just didn't believe that they're going to trade 2 first-round picks, move up in that draft to get Trey Lance. Got a cannon for an arm, mobile quarterback. Shanahan does nothing but scheme open spaces for his players. I thought that Trey Lance would be a home run. I think any quarterback in the system will be a home run. But Lance just has so much more upside than the rest of the quarterbacks, especially Sam Darnold. But all of the reports are coming out right now that Lance is the 3. And everybody on the team, you hear those Kittle interviews, like, this is Purdy's job to lose. And I after time, I do believe that is the case.
And I mean, personally, as a Niners fan, I sitting there thinking like it's Purdy's team to lose, and it's been that since like 2 weeks since he stepped in.
Yeah.
I mean, he hasn't had a bad game except the NFC Championship, and the only thing I gotta say about it though is I don't think Purdy is going. Like, I think fantasy wise, I know a lot of people are carrying Purdy and Lance shares. If you're a holder of both, I think you honestly are personally rooting for Lance here, though. I don't think Purdy will ever be that QB1. I don't think he'll ever be top 12 quarterback. I think Lance has true potential to be top 5.
Agreed.
Don't personally think it would happen, but there's potential. But
Fully agreed, especially in that offense. But if he gets traded, we'll see.
Yeah, Purdy just showed efficiency last year. Like that was it. And then fantasy wise, efficiency doesn't always get it done.
He's got the efficiency. He's got trust. The system trusts him, and I just don't think he has as much talent as Trey. And I don't know if that talent could be ignored. Still, the reports are telling us that, but this is the biggest question mark for me in terms of QB room for the NFL, without a doubt.
Absolutely, yeah. I think there was already talks that Lance could be heading to the Vikings in some type of trade. Doesn't seem like they got that done. I think that would be a great fit, especially with them having Kirk Cousins in a contract year. I mean, it seems like he's in a contract year every year, but they just keep on giving him either why am I blanking on it right now? The 1-year deal, whatever. So if Kirk Cousins goes, I would love to see him paired up in that offense, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. It seems like they're holding on to Lance for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I don't think there's a chance they trade him. Gave up too much. I think he's either going to become our starter this year, or you might have to hold on to him on your bench for a couple more years.
Right. I mean, similar to like us Dynasty players, like why would they sell Lance at his all-time low in value? He hasn't proved anything. If he gets in there for a few games, looks good, then capitalize on his value.
Yeah, and whether or not he's good, the team's good. So don't make him look always better.
That defense is scary too. It's insane.
Another big piece of news we got is that we have reports from Patriots writers that Pierre Strong Jr. could actually turn into a complimentary back with Ramondre, which, he definitely was someone who's a lot of leagues was riding taxi squad, and I got him in a couple, and it's nice. I mean, if he becomes a nice 1-2 combo with Ramondre, who knows? Because Belichick just loves spreading that ball between running backs. So,
yeah, Evan, I know you don't trust the Patriots running back.
Anybody in that running back backfield, that don't trust any of them, as long as Bill Belichick's the coach. But we'll see. We'll see if that ever changes. But yeah, I mean, historically, they've never really had just one back take everything. And yeah, I see some truth to this report. I see that they're going to be spreading. I think that they're going to be spreading the ball around, and I wouldn't even single out Kevin Harris too. I think that he's probably going to see some carries on a weekly basis as well.
Right. I also see truth in this report for what they were saying. Like Pierre Strong, I think he had 10 touches and 110 yards or something like that. Like he is explosive. Stevenson doesn't have that top end speed. If they were to use him in like an outside zone scheme, I could see Pierre Strong really having a bigger role, because Ramondre Stevenson isn't going to break off those big, long runs, but he can destroy a defense over time. And he is well-rounded. Like he showed last year that he has the ability to catch a bunch of passes. And other than who do they got? Ty Montgomery on that team. Like you're not putting Ty Montgomery in the game. Let's be real. So I still like Ramondre Stevenson as a top-end option this year in fantasy. But I do think that Pierre Strong will surprise people with the amount of touches he's going to get.
All right, and then something else that I don't think is going to have as much of a fantasy impact, but it's still something to kind of watch over for now, at least, is that we're seeing some reports that Josh Jacobs could be holding out until week 1. I mean, we're not seeming like he would hold out on any games, but the offseason program could be missed entirely.
Yeah, that's bad news for the Raiders. That's bad news for the Raiders. Because if you look at their depth chart right now, me and Dan were talking about this actually just before the episode dropped. Like, what are we looking at for who they have?
Amir White, Amir Abdullah, Brandon Bowden. bad behind that. Zamir White's got some promise, at least being young and
still.
unproven. There's always the wonder of what could be, but he's no Josh Jacobs. And if they don't get Jimmy Garoppolo too, like on top of it, there's the Jimmy G contract is easy to get out of. He's injured, and if they decide to move on from him, they have Brian Hoyer starting games for them. Like 38-year-old Brian Hoyer, consistent backup. I know him very well from my love for the Browns. Even as a youngster, he was not a starting QB. So this Raiders team could get ugly really quick if Jimmy G isn't healthy and if Josh Jacobs is not starting for the Raiders. I think they're an easy lock for me as the last place team in that division.
I think the only positive, if he doesn't come to the Raiders, they might get Caleb Williams next year.
They'll have to beat the Cardinals.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I think if Cardinals got that one pick, they would trade it, though. I mean,
that's the thing. The Cardinals have their own pick, obviously, and then they also traded for the Texans' first-round pick.
That's going to be a nice hockey pick there, probably.
They are going to have 2 top 5, at least top 10 picks. And I'm really hoping, a lot of people are talking Caleb Williams to the Cardinals. I'm really hoping that they end up going Marvin Harrison instead and believing in Kyler.
I love Marvin Harrison.
I like that.
Marvin Harrison Jr. is a beast. And his dad's my favorite player of all time. So, and I'm an Ohio State fan. All right. I'll let that be. I died. All right. What else we got here in the news?
We got Hendon Hooker is expected to open up the year on NFI after his knee surgery. That it's about 6 months at this point. This isn't the biggest news because it pretty much is a redshirt year, but the main thing to take away from it, in my opinion, is if you were actually hoping that maybe he'd make a like late season appearance, I honestly would not count on that at all. I think maybe he gets a couple snaps and maybe plays week 18 or something. But yeah, I don't really see much out of him at all this year now.
I agree with that for sure. I have him in one of my leagues. I was hopeful that maybe he could make an appearance towards the end of the season, but again, like you said, with this news, it's just not going to happen. Unfortunately, full redshirt season.
Yeah, and I don't think Goff is going anywhere anytime soon. People forget he's still, under 30, well under 30, and he's not like, these Kirk Cousins, Tannehills that are flying out there ready to be replaced soon.
No, and you're right.
I'm looking Super Bowl experience.
Yeah, what a stud in the playoffs. But no, you're right. He has a dead cap of $15 million this year and $5 million next year. They could definitely move on from him after this season, but he's not going anywhere in 2023. Mm-hmm. All right.
And then for the final part of the news, this is something that obviously will help fans out. Kenneth Walker is expected to see at least around 17 carries a game. We had a lot of people worried with them drafting another back pretty early, how that would affect him. But, I mean, the 17 carries does not seem like a worry at all.
No, I love me some Kenneth Walker. I actually grabbed him early in our most recent startup, early in the 3rd round, because I'm not afraid of what Zach Charbonnet can do to that. They've always kind of had committee back. Maybe Carson dominated, but I think that they're going to throw in more pieces. Not going to be the Kenneth Walker show, but I do think that he's going to get somewhere between at least 12 to 17 carries a game.
See, I disagree personally. I do like Zach Charbonnet. I'm a little bit biased towards it. I think that he is a complete player. He can be used on the goal line. He can catch passes. He showed that in his college profile. He is a good complete back. And by taking him in the 2nd round, I do think they show that they're going to be close, in my opinion, to splitting carries. I think Kenneth Walker will definitely still take the bulk of it, and he does have that top end athleticism where he can break off a touchdown run from anywhere on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's hard to let go of. But if they get close to the goal line, if they are in a clear passing down situation, neither of one of those are Kenneth Walker's strength. So I think that's where we'll start to see Zach Charbonnet making his appearances.
So you say start to see, or do you think it's going to be more of an immediate impact?
There's a learning curve with any rookie. I'm sure that the first few weeks at least, like even Kenneth Walker, last year it was Rashad Penny, and then Penny goes down, Walker emerges as a top end running back. I immediately traded for Kenneth Walker as soon as he went down. I traded Jalen Waddle for Kenneth Walker, and it ended up not being a bad move for my build that year as a wide receiver heavy team. But yeah, I do think that Zach Charbonnet is still going to get at least, I'd say, 40% of those touches in the backfield.
Yeah, I think he's just going to more take the third down role, unless I think third and short might still kind of fall onto Walker. But I think anything that's third and like over 5, you're not going to see Kenneth in there much. So it kind of really takes out the passing aspect, which he already wasn't the best receiving back, but those 1 or 2 catches add up, and if you eliminate those,
you're right. Yeah, Michigan State never passed him. I think he had something like 14 receptions in his career there, is incredibly low, whereas Zach Charbonnet had, I believe it was in the 40s for his receptions in his last season at UCLA. So completely agree with that.
Yeah.
And now with that, we move on to our rankings. Let's get into the bulk of it, gentlemen. All right. So before we dive straight into the Dynasty rankings, I do think it's important to bring up how we view building a Dynasty roster. Personally, I think of players in terms of 3-year windows. I think that in the NFL, it's hard enough to predict things week to week. And if you are trying to predict 4 or 5 years down the future, you need a crystal ball or Doc Brown's DeLorean in order to figure this out. No one can predict that far, in my opinion. But I know other people have differences to that. Evan?
I personally, I love centering my team around youth. Me and Dan just did a Dynasty startup recently, and there's actually one player that I drafted that has played over 2 seasons, and that's Damian Harris. So I like to build my roster around youth because that's something that is promised. You're promised youth, you promised more years, pretty much, unless you completely, fall short of expectations. But that's rare. And if you load up on a youthful roster, you will find, foundations that will come out. Like Amon-Ra St. Brown that I drafted in another one later in the Dynasty as a rookie, and he's proven to be tremendous for me. So there's those guys out there. If you load up your roster with enough youth, you will get pillars of youth that you can surround your team with.
That was the biggest deal in our draft. You had him in like the 15th round or something.
Or Jalen Hurts in the 5th, maybe one of those two. We'll see.
Personally, for me, building is pretty much similar to Evan. It's all about my team building in Dynasty is all about finding those core pieces. And then, just kind of building up with everything else. Once you got those couple core pieces, you got a lineup of, say, 1 QB league, 1 QB, 2 backs, 2 receivers, tight end, and a flex. All you need is, say you got 2 good running backs, 1 solid receiver, and a decent QB, 1 big trade, and you're right there competing. You got a big chance every single year. All it takes is those 2-3 foundation players. And if it takes you, a couple years to really build up those foundation players, like one of my big moves was, just trying to draft late receivers. That's what I love doing, and just hoping one of them kind of turns into a mediocre and kind of bunching them together, packaging them, and someone's gonna take the bait off of a week 18 rookie who that was his first good first good week of the season. Just kind of that's how I build teams. Just take advantage of people, pretty much, is know the market.
Yeah. And if you go youth, you're not holding any bags. Don't hold the bag.
Oh yeah.
That's Fair. If you draft youth heavy, most of the time your assets appreciate.
Mhm.
Like you're going to find that if you, especially with wide receivers, which we're about to bring up now, if you draft young wide receivers, they will grow, and you can trade them for more as that time comes. So with that being said, let's get into the dynasty rankings. All right. So the first tier that we have taken all three of our rankings and compiled our fantasy rant consensus rankings. So that's what we'll be listing off here. In tier one, we have Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. However, we have one of our members here ranking him into the top tier. We have Garrett Wilson in Evan's tier one. Evan, why do you view Garrett Wilson in tier one?
Well, I think he's going to be one of those like foundations of youth that you can build your roster around. I mean, let's look at those numbers last year: 83 receptions, 1,100 yards, and only 4 touchdowns. I think that he's got some positive regression there for the touchdowns. And if we actually kind of rank him against the peers, so if we put his numbers at a rank out of 69 qualified receivers within a minimum of 60 targets last year, he was second in avoided tackles with 22. His catch rate was 59%, 12th percentile, and his drop rate was 2.4%, 86th percentile. So the fact that he was 86th percentile in drop rate, but 12th percentile in catch rate just shows a huge, like big flaming Zach Wilson explanation behind it. And I think without him now, and he's got MVP, future Hall of Famer, Aaron Rodgers to throw the ball to him now. I think the sky's the limit for him, and I'm excited to see what he can do. And he's not completely in, the God tier with Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, but he's definitely got, a foot, maybe some shin. He's starting to step into that tier for sure.
Just inching in there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't see him in that tier. I love Garrett Wilson. I think he's an incredible talent. He's so productive after the catch. You just get that guy in open space and he'll do the rest. However, he does not have Justin Jefferson's skill set, and he doesn't have Joe Burrow as his quarterback like Jefferson and Chase do, So, like, I just don't see him being there when he has a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers leading the way. Who knows what happens after 2 seasons? Are they going to go back to Zach Wilson? No, hopefully not. Who else are they going to find though? There's only so many top tier quarterbacks, and if Garrett Wilson doesn't have one of those, I can't see him being in the top tier.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly got I don't even have Wilson as my number 3. I got a couple other receivers in front of him, and I mean, the dude is athletically gifted. It's no one can deny that. But Aaron Rodgers has 1-2 years there maybe, and then right back on the QB carousel. So I don't think he can ever reach that true tier 1. Maybe he has one season like it this year, but I don't think after that he's ever gonna keep that like top dog mentality, or not top dog mentality, but top 3 kind of top tier player who you draft first round like top 5 picks. I don't think he will ever be that.
We'll watch his ADP for next year as the season goes on.
All right, so that brings us to tier 2. In tier 2, we have AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson, CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Waddle, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Chris Olave. So Chris Olave was bumped up in our consensus rankings because Mason and Evan have him ranked pretty highly. I personally have Chris Olave as my wide receiver 12, and the reason for that is because of his deep, what he strives on. Like, he is a deep ball wide receiver. He had the 8th highest ADOT of any wide receiver last year at 14.9 yards. He has a QB in Derek Carr that is not great at throwing the deep ball. On Derek Carr's passing attempts in the past 2 years, in 2021, he had a 38.3% completion percentage on passes of 20-plus yards. The following season, 2022, this last year, He had a completion percentage of 33.8%. That was good for 28th in the league of 36 qualifying quarterbacks. If Chris Olave wants to continue being a deep threat, he's going to need somebody who can throw him the ball deep accurately. I just don't see Derek Carr being that guy. And it's not like Derek Carr didn't attempt those passes either. Sometimes you see those completions percentages skewed because they don't throw the ball deep very frequently. Last year, Derek Carr was 10th in his attempt percentage. So of all the passes he was throwing, 14.1% of them were of 20 plus yards, and that was good for 10th in the league. He throws the ball deep a decent amount, and he's unsuccessful a decent amount. So I just don't see Chris Olave having that same explosiveness per game. Like, he's obviously still explosive. That's his own thing. He's a great separator. He's a great route runner. And he shows so much promise as a rookie. But when you don't get the ball put on you, it's going to be hard to make the most of those opportunities. So that was my main thing for him. I will also say that New Orleans, it does not have a heavy passing play percentage. They throw the ball the 21st most in the league. Not terrible, not great. Maybe we see that go up a little bit with not having Andy Dalton at the helm. I will say he's a clear upgrade from Andy Dalton. And to be fair, I will say Chris Olave put up those numbers, and Andy Dalton was the worst in the league at completion percentage downfield. So we can still see a little bit of a boost in that department, but still not good enough for me to have him in tier 2.
Yeah, he definitely produced enough for me in that first year to get me comfortable in the tier 2 category for him. I could be wrong. The biggest thing I'd have to agree with you on is, and I don't even know if this is one of your reasons for why he's so low, but Michael Thomas is there now. He wasn't there really at all last season, and he's going to command targets, and those targets are going to be limited now for Chris Olave. He's not going to get the same amount of targets he was able to get last year, but I still believe in him, and I still think that he's worth the tier 2 pedigree for me.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, I think with like just how bad the QB play was, he was still producing a lot. And yeah, like you said, Carr's not the biggest deep ball guy. He's very good at the short little dishes. Like he's not going to throw the ball deep, but you'd see maybe Olave evolve. Or Carr's first time in his career is on a new team. Yeah, he had a new coach. His coaching situation's changed a lot, but just the entire team mentality being in a different location could change it up. The running game might be changing up soon. I know they've been a very run heavy team, but they've always had Sean Payton until last year. Kamara might miss, who knows, half the season. And Jamal Williams isn't, they're both older backs. I know they did draft, blanking on his name right now.
Andre.
Yes.
Miller,
Miller, yeah. But I think this team could honestly evolve into a different style team with new coaching. I think this is kind of the first year where everyone's kind of really getting off the Sean Payton sort of era. I think they're still kind of living with the ghost of that. So, you never know. I think he's always gonna. I think that team could be different on the Olave. Just could be a top. I have him as 8, I believe, but I would not be surprised if I ever saw him moving his way into top 5.
Yeah, you do both have him at wide receiver 8.
Yep,
I do see that. I see sportsmanlike misconduct. One of our co-hosts, or not co-hosts, but peers on Stadium Rant here, betting the house on Michael Thomas getting hurt this season. I would take that money. I'm in with you, man. I don't see Michael Thomas being anything more than really a red zone threat. He had the 3 touchdowns in 3 games last year. He has an insanely high contested catch rate. I don't have that up in front of me, but I took a look at it recently, and I believe it's over 65% in the vast majority of the season. He's great. They do offer different skill sets. I think that Michael Thomas could have a good year if he stayed healthy, but it just hasn't happened in the last 3 years. So I don't see that being a true threat to Chris Olave. But like you said, Mason, they have shown an infinity for the run game, and they showed that through the money. Like they drafted Kendre Miller on day 2. They have Jamal Williams on a decently sized contract, and Alvin Kamara through next season. Next season, his dead cap is $16 million. He's not going anywhere. They just have too many big running backs to not run the ball, and that's what they've done well over the years. So I just don't see Chris Olave in tier 2. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a hater. I got him at wide receiver 12. He's still a wide receiver 1 for me in Dynasty. He's just not in quite to that tier. He would have to pass T. Higgins, Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, and Tyreek Hill. I can't see. And again, we talked about how we view Dynasty players. Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill, they all, in my opinion, have at least 2 years of elite production. I wouldn't trade those guys for very many players. So Chris Olave would have to make a big jump in year 2 in order to get the bump up. But, he could do that. He could do that. All right, so that brings us to tier 3. In tier 3, we have Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, Devonta Smith, Drake London, Cooper Kupp, T. Higgins, and DK Metcalf. In tier 3, the biggest differential between us is Evan. You have Drake London at wide receiver 9, just missing your tier 2.
Yeah.
Why are you so high on Drake London?
I got him right under Chris Olave, actually. And I love Drake London. He's 21 years old. So that's probably why I love him so much, since I do love centering my team around youth so much as well. But let's look at his numbers last year: 72 receptions, 866 yards, 4 touchdowns. And he was the 6th highest wide receiver grade on PFF for a rookie since PFF has started. Since PFF has started, he's the 6th highest wide receiver grade for a rookie wide receiver. He's got 29% target share. And I don't think that the free agency add-ons of Matt Collins and Scotty Miller are going to threaten that target share at all. And he's got a 65.1% catch rate. And diving in even deeper to that catch rate, 72.3% versus man, 81.6% versus zone, 72.5% versus press and success rate, according to reception perception. So
that's pretty solid. That's hard to argue.
All 3 categories.
Hard to argue. As a Drake London truther, I find it hard to argue. The only thing I'll say is Arthur Smith. How do you get around the 2nd heaviest run percentage in the league? You rarely see over history, the past decade, teams that run the ball more than they pass the ball. And they were at they passed the ball on 44.71%. So that gives them roughly a 56% run percentage. That's insane. That's and they just drafted Bijan. Yeah. It's they're not going to run the ball less now that they got a generational talent. So it's just, if we can trust Ritter to be a very efficient quarterback, then I could get behind Drake London being maybe top 15 wide receiver. Right now, I personally have Drake London at 16. He's right on that cusp. I just can't get behind it with the offensive scheme that they have.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's ever going to evolve into that 102 pick that everyone, was drafting him at. In leagues where I was holding the 102, looking at charts, everything, everyone's like, oh, London. And no, avoiding him. I just don't see it. That offense is so run based. I mean, I like Ritter, but I think the team is going to be very run based. Pitts is already there. He's another threat. And when you got no other really true wide receivers on that team, I think London's just going to be covered the whole time because he has no help. And I mean, they drafted a running back in the first round after a rookie dropped 1,000 yards. Yeah, he did break 1,000. Yeah.
Right, the 8th overall pick. It's like it's one thing if you go back at the first, but 8th overall pick is really saying something. That's an
Yeah,
investment.
no, I think they're just fully committing to being a run-based team that could be probably the least run pass plays in the league next year, especially if Ritter does not show up.
I agree. And I think, I mean, they were only second because the Bears had probably the most abysmal wide receiver core in the league last year. Like they got Darnell Mooney and traded the 32nd pick for Chase Claypool midway through the season. It's just it's it's tough to get behind anybody who runs the ball any wide receiver on a team that runs the ball that much. But he is incredibly talented. I will give you that for sure.
I agree.
Right.
The talent's there. Just I think his situation is horrendous.
Yes, agreed. And I do quick side tangent. Where do you guys got Bijan for your dynasty rookie running backs, or not rookie running backs, dynasty running backs rankings?
Well, let me take a quick look. I believe I had him in like top 3.
Yeah, he's my top 3 too.
He's my one.
He's your
Oh
one.
yeah, I got him as 1 too.
He could
easily my one. He's so. It's just you watch the highlight tape.
Mhm.
It is just mouth watering. The guy is insane. Balance.
I mean, he can catch and run. I mean,
he's gonna be using the passing game a lot.
He's got it all. He's got receiver like hands. He's got crazy contact balance. He's big. He's fast. Like you can't ask for much more in a guy. All right. Tier 4. We got Michael Pittman at wide receiver 17, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Christian Watson, DJ Moore, Jerry Jeudy, Treylon Burks, Quentin Johnson, and Brandon Ayuk. So, only reason why Jerry Jeudy is this high is because of me. I love me some Jerry Jeudy. Give me some more Jerry Jeudy. Stay low on him, please, so I can get him in more leagues. He is so talented, and I don't believe in Cortland Sutton at all. Tim Patrick's coming off of an ACL injury. KJ Hamler's constantly injured and is really an undersized one-trick pony. Marvin Mims Jr., he is a solid addition. I can absolutely see him taking over Cortland Sutton's role in the future. Year 1, I'm not too worried about him. So the reason why I'm so big on Jerry Jeudy, last season, he had 11 games where he played over 60%. In those games, he had 86 targets, 60 receptions, 879 yards, and 6 touchdowns. On a per-game basis, that breaks down to roughly 8 targets, 5.5 receptions, 80 yards, and half a touchdown per game. If we statted that out to a full season, that is 133 targets, 93 receptions, 1,358 yards, and 9 touchdowns. That would have had him ranked among the 10th wide receiver for receptions, the 7th for yards, and he would have been 1 yard behind CeeDee Lamb for 6th in the league for yards. If he stayed healthy, he would have had a year, and we can all agree that Russell Wilson was not at the top of his game last year. Now Russell Wilson hopefully can take a step up from where he was. He's got Sean Payton coming in as the head coach, and there's no stud running back there. Javonte Williams is going to take at least half of the season to get healthy. They have Samaje Perine, who has, up until this point, mainly been a receiving running back, and he's great in pass blocking too. So I could see the passing usage going up, running more heavy passing scheme. And Sean Payton's always done a great job of making the most out of the talent that he has. I can see him using Jerry Jeudy mainly in the intermediate range where he's great. I don't see them using Cortland Sutton anything more than just a possession wide receiver. Marvin Mims will get worked in. We'll see what kind of impact he can have year 1. And then again, KJ Hamler's just a field stretcher. So right now, I really see Jerry Jeudy easily as a wide receiver 2. Right now, I have him as wide receiver 17, but let me see. I see in your rankings, Evan, you got him at wide receiver 25 and Mason at 29.
So I don't
So
hate it.
you don't hate him?
Top
I
25.
feel like
I
you
can't hate anybody in my top 25, but they're all going to be pretty talented there. I don't trust Russ enough. I think that the Seahawks really got a steal when they traded him away with all the luxury that they got back. It's something that I just can't get past. And in order for him and Sutton to rise on my rankings, I need to see more from Russ first.
I personally have never really trusted Broncos receivers for a while. Second Peyton left, just kind of stay away from him. But I mean, my big thing with Judy is when you come down to like what's the most important thing about a player is availability. I mean, there's always every season you start off and it's like, oh, I'm always personally because I never draft him. I'm like, oh man, this should have drafted him this year. He could have been a league winner. Then week 5 down, and it's just like, oh, okay, well, good thing I'm bitched. And it's just to me, there's nothing more important than that because I mean, you could be Justin's at Jefferson level talent, but if you do that one game, then who cares? You're worthless.
Mm-hmm.
That is fair. And that brings us to a very smooth transition. Get ready to defend Kadarius Toney after saying those words.
Yeah.
Oh man, you set yourself up.
Well, let's.
So in our next
right.
tier, quickly we have Terry McLaurin, Chris Godwin, George Pickens, Jordan Addison, Marquise Brown, Jameson Williams, Jahan Dotson, DeAndre Hopkins, and Amari Cooper. That ranges from wide receiver 25 to 33. But we have Mason with a ranking of Kadarius Toney at wide receiver 28.
Yeah. So,
after your last sentence, give me what you got for Kadarius Toney.
all right, I know this is one that most people would not agree with, but there's just something. This like when he was on the Giants, I didn't really see much in him, but when he got traded to the Chiefs, started watching him a lot more. And yeah, he didn't get a ton of receptions. Like I think he only had like 14 receptions total with the Chiefs, but he was recovering from injury, is learning the playbook, pretty late into the season. He's not going to get the full play make, but he did score 2 touchdowns, I think, during the regular season, which is pretty good for, not playing as much as he will be next year. He scored on trick plays like when I don't think it counted. They're the like octopus play or whatever you call that. They scored on him.
Ring around the rosy.
Yeah.
And then I mean they used him in the Super Bowl. I mean, he got a touchdown play. I think he's just gonna consistently be that like trick play guy for them. I've heard great reports from Andy Reid this offseason. And I mean, Mahomes, who are his receivers? I mean, we got MVS. I mean, McCole Hardman's gone, Juju's gone. I mean, Kelsey obviously, but he's old, and there's a limit to that. Who's gonna take over in a couple of years as his number 1 wide receiver? And like Sky Moore is not super promising to me, so I don't think he's gonna ever step into that role. But I mean, I think the floor is just open for Tony, and his ceiling is just it's super. I think he can. 28. I only stopped at 28 because I already knew it was a little aggressive, but I could put him higher.
Hey, gotta stand by what you believe in. I don't blame you. He is. Then everyone tries to compare those quick twitch wide receivers to Tyreek Hill. There is no Tyreek Hill. He is the one and only. Yeah. Kadarius Toney, I would say, is the next closest thing in terms of his crazy agility. It's just like you watch him shake and bake dudes all over the field. It is ridiculous, but I think he needs the ball in his hands to make that happen. He's not a precise route runner. According to reception perception, he was in the 16th percentile in terms of his success rate against man coverage, the 17th against zone coverage, and then 27th against press coverage. It's just he doesn't get open on his own. Granted, Mahomes is, again, like Rodgers we mentioned earlier, he's one of those guys can drop it in a breadbasket. Like he doesn't need a big window to put it on there. So that's the plus for him. But you mentioned Sky Moore. I do see Sky Moore taking a step up personally. In that same thing, in Matt Harmon's reception perception, he was 50th percentile against man, 52nd against zone, and 70th against press. Not insane numbers, but for a rookie wide receiver with a similar skill set, more promising than Tony in terms of what he can do before he gets the ball. And he can still make guys miss. There it was Sky Moore had on 10% of the times that he received the ball, he made at least 2 guys miss. If he can do that at an above average rate, maybe it's not the same rate as Kadarius Toney, but still a pretty high rate of making guys miss after he gets the ball in his hands. I think he has a clearer shot to get that wide receiver 1 role behind Kelsey, obviously.
So you think Sky Moore's higher than Tony?
Man, it's hard to say because I think Kadarius Toney, he can be suited like specifically in this offense. They use that flanker wide receiver in pre-motion. They get him moving. They use them frequently. The Chiefs' offense is insane. It's like none other. So I think if it was any other team, I would rank Sky Moore above Kadarius Toney. But with Tony being on the Chiefs and them utilizing the pre-motion snaps so frequently, I would still go Tony above Sky Moore. But I think that Sky Moore is the more traditional wide receiver compared to Tony.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I think that if I don't think the wide receiver room was very good for the Chiefs last year with Juju, MVS, and Sky Moore. So I think that with Tony, the addition, I would have liked to see a lot more from him. Other than, you're right, he did only get like 16 receptions last year from the Chiefs. So I don't think that's not enough. They don't show enough trust in him to not give him the ball more, and he hadn't shown enough for me to be able to rank him higher. And I also thank you guys for not mentioning his name because for me to bring up.
Yeah.
You'll mention him later.
Justin Ross, let's go.
Added it to the counter.
The counter.
This man cannot resist Justin Ross.
So
I have a literal counter for every time he says his name. We are up to 8, and this is the first podcast. Y'all haven't heard it, but in the pre-recording process, we're already up to 8 mentions for Justin Ross. So,
and it's not going to stop. It's not going to stop either, and it's going to keep going once we see more what's happening on the field as well. So just you guys wait.
Can't wait till he's out of the league after this year.
Yeah.
Cut from the 53-man roster, Justin Ross.
I mean, with all the free agents out there this year during the offseason for wide receiver, they didn't add anybody really. And I think that they got a lot of trust somewhere in that wide receiver room, or there's something that the masses don't know, because they probably, if you don't agree with Justin Ross, they probably should have added somebody. They probably should have brought in another third, but they didn't. So I think that shows not only trust in Tony, but trust in Ross as well, and Sky Moore.
Pretty sure that was 3 times you said Justin.
3 times? 3 times?
There you go. Add him up.
I think they have trust in Patrick Mahomes, and it doesn't matter outside of that.
Yeah.
You can give that guy role players, and that's all that he really needs. Marquise Valdes-Scantling, he's going to stretch the field. We talked about Tony being the flanker wide receiver. Sky Moore can kind of cover the rest of the ground. Obviously, we got Travis Kelce running all sorts of routes. No matter what that man does, he's going to end up with 1,300 yards and 10 to 12 touchdowns. So I think that they trust in Mahomes just putting the ball on the money right on time more than they trust in Justin Ross. We're going to have to start my own counter just because of your ass over here. But, I do think that Tony has the highest ceiling on that team to your defense, Mason. So, all right, the next tier we have Deebo Samuel, Zay Flowers, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Mike Williams, Deontay Johnson, and Kadarius Toney. But before we get into that, I would just like to suggest anybody watching take a look at the Gritty Gamblers podcast that we have. If you are into gambling, we have guys on the case. We got Austin, Matt, Carlson getting after it with big plays on Mondays and Fridays at 9 p.m. It's all about cashing out that ticket, and Stadium Rant has you covered. These guys know what they're doing. You want to throw down some bets come football season, you got your podcast. All right. So we had Debo, Zay, Calvin, Kirk, Williams, and Deontay Johnson and Tony. I do believe here, Mason, in your tier 6, you got Jacoby Myers.
Yep.
Why do you believe Jacoby Myers is worthy of that tier 6 ranking?
Well, if I did my research correct, the last 3 years, Jacoby Myers has dropped over 800 yards, which, it's not the 1,000 mark, but over 800 is still solid. His production really was not, his fantasy production was not really there because, I don't think he scored a touchdown until his, third or fourth season. And I think that's purely off of, coaching decisions. I don't think it has anything to do with his talent level. He was a beast through the first 5 weeks this year where, the trades were crazy for him. And I think he has shown that even in a Belichick offense that he can be a producer. And all it takes is, one adjustment on Jimmy G. He's efficient. He's not the greatest, but he's efficient. You got Devontae and Renfro taking targets, but Devontae, I think the Raiders are going to kind of go full tank mode in a couple. I think after this season, Jacobs is going to dip. Jimmy's not the guy of the future. I think Devontae. They're not going to cut Devontae because it's $40 million in dead cap or something like that.
Man.
That's just stupid to do. But he still is a very good receiver that I think has a ton of trade market value. That I think the Raiders will dish him. And if you got Myers there, even if it is Jimmy tossing to him and he's the number one for a couple years, he's going to produce enough to be at least, wide receiver 3 range, I think.
That's fair. Evan, I know you got Hunter Renfro pretty highly. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think that Hunter Renfro is not anybody to second guess in this offense either. I think that 2 years ago he was a top 10 wide receiver producing for fantasy, and I think that people forget that. The addition of Devontae Adams, of course, disrupted that, and he was injured a lot last year along with Waller. But I think that with the disappearance of Waller now, there's going to be more targets left for the wide receivers to be consumed there at Oakland. And Michael Mayer also going to be consuming targets as well. He's a rookie tight end that I drafted. I like him a lot too. And I just don't see enough room for Jacoby to be relevant enough in that tier for me.
I hear you there. Specifically for me, it's again a quarterback situation. Then on top of it, I feel like in consensus ranking, you're not too far off of his consensus ranking. Let me see here. We got Jacoby Myers. You're only 6 above the consensus ranking.
Yeah.
Fantasy Pros consensus ranking has him at 52. I feel like there is some boost to his ranking just due to the familiarity with Josh McDaniels. But he wasn't with Josh McDaniels since 2016. Or Jimmy G, that is. I'm sorry. Jimmy G wasn't with Josh McDaniels in that system since 2016. He doesn't have the familiarity that he once had. It's been 7 years since then. So he's not just going to step in and run this offense, especially if he's injured right now. He's not with the team. He's not learning the ins and outs of Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers' routes. And I just don't see him stepping in and providing a boost from where Jacoby Myers was. Mac Jones may not be a stud quarterback, but he at least was smart and timely with his decisions. Doesn't have the mobility, he doesn't have the big arm, but he was smart. He's a system quarterback. And I just don't see Jimmy G stepping in without any time in preseason, stepping into that role and making Jacoby Myers a priority. I agree that it's going to be Adams or Jacobs getting the bulk of the touches, and then B, Jacoby Myers having important enough of routes downfield to capitalize on the targets that he does have. All right. Okay, so for our next tier, we have Keenan Allen, Jonathan Mingo, Mike Evans, Gabe Davis, Rashad Bateman, and Juju Smith-Schuster. That is our tier 7. Someone that didn't make our consensus tier 7 that made Evans is Michael Thomas. We
Yeah,
already touched on him a little bit earlier, but what do you have to say about your ranking?
I mean, everybody knows that he hasn't, seen a full season in 3 years, but his last season where he was healthy, he was the best wide receiver in the NFL, undisputed, 2019. So even while playing
Wait, hold
unhealthy,
on. What year was that?
I believe it was 2019 or was it 2018? It was
No,
2018.
I'm not disputing it. I'm saying that was a long time ago.
It was, but and to say that it was a long time ago, I totally agree with that. But he was healthy within the past 3 years, or not healthy enough to play. But while playing unhealthy, he was able to put up over 400 yards with half a season in 2020. And most recently, last year, he played 3 games, but he dominated. He averaged over 7 targets, and he averaged over 14.3 points per game. And I mean, that's demanding targets, and he's going to get the volume. And I don't have him as high as Keenan Allen or those guys too, but he's at the bottom of those older aging veterans for me.
So
for me, I'm sorry, Dan.
no, go ahead,
my
mate.
thought is kind of like, how long are they going to put up with this injury stuff? Like, it's drastic how bad his injuries are, and like, it's every year, it's just an expected thing. And you think like maybe he gets hurt this year, Saints are done with him. I mean, they're not going to cut him because the dead cap, but like maybe try to dish him off for some crappy pick, or maybe 2 years max is all he's got. And if you have 2 years where he plays like 5 games, then no. He's on my do not touch list.
Yes, I agree with that. The injury scares completely takes him off of my board in terms of startup ranking or startup drafts. I don't take him. But in terms of what he's able to do, you were mentioning the 2019 to 2020 season. He did put up insane numbers. At that time, he was still running in the 90th percentile of success rate against man and press coverage. Since then, though, in his 3 games that was charted by Matt Harmon's reception perception, he went down to 34th percentile of success rate against man coverage, 17th against zone coverage. He's still up there against press coverage. He's in the 70th percentile against press coverage, but you need more than that when you're going to be considered in the range that he still has just because of a season 3 years ago. Like if he was healthy and putting up these numbers and could get some type of volume coming his way, I could get behind it a little bit more. We talked about his contested catch rate. He doesn't need a lot of separation in order to still complete these passes. He's got sticky hands. He's a big bodied receiver, and he knows how to use his size and to his advantage. But if you're 30 years old, you are not running routes at a high success rate, and then on top of it all, now you have an emerging Chris Olave starting to take over in this dominant role. I just can't get behind him, especially in a dynasty setting. I'd be willing to take a shot on him in redraft, but
those are his numbers too, like from reception perception, from like when he was injured. Like he still wasn't fully healthy when he was on the field in those 3 games. So I guess you could use that and in your analysis, but like to say that is like that's where he's at right now in terms of his talent level.
He was healthy. It was the first 3 games of the season.
He wasn't fully healthy. That's why wasn't that why he stopped playing, was because his foot was still bothering him the whole time, and it was kind of like that hush hush thing.
Not according to any reports I've seen. I thought he just got re-injured.
I'm pretty sure he was injured that whole start of the season, but I could be wrong about that.
I think that did come out like weeks after or something, though. So maybe
But my rankings are assuming that the surgery went well and the foot is no longer an issue. So that I kind of am trusting the medical staff.
Okay. I mean, the medical staff has failed him in the past. We've seen
Yes.
not playing
Yes.
quite a few seasons, but okay. All right. So tier 8, we got Elijah Moore, Jaden Reed, Josh Downs, Jalen Hyatt, Darnell Mooney, Cortland Sutton, Rasheed Rice, Nico Collins, and Tyler Lockett. Here we start to see a little bit more diverse rankings. We got Cortland Sutton, old man, Tyler Lockett, old man, Juju Smith-Schuster, constant disappointment since not taking over as he was the Dynasty wide receiver one about 3 or 4 years ago when Antonio Brown left. And he was going to take over as the stud wide receiver on the Pittsburgh. Done nothing but disappoint since.
And then
But
Juju started making TikToks and talking crap about people
Yeah.
and got lit up.
everyone got fed up. No more big contracts for Juju. But the vet that I want to talk about is Tyler Lockett. He is our consensus wide receiver 55. That is 10 below the ECR consensus ranking for fantasy pros. I have him at, let's see here, wide receiver 46. I love Tyler Lockett. I think that he has done nothing but prove himself over time. He's consistently healthy. He knows how to avoid hits. You'll see it even in his highlight tapes, which usually you don't see a player taking a dive. But Tyler Lockett, he understands he's not a big guy. He's going to try to avoid those hits. And that's how he stays healthy. And in his entire career, he has never played less than 15 games in a season. In the last 4 seasons, he has above 1,000 yards receiving every year. I think that he's getting pushed down boards, A, because his age is going up there, but B, obviously, JSN joining the team is really pushing him down. It's going to be difficult for him to hold him off for long, as I do absolutely believe in Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think that he will overtake him as the wide receiver 2 next year, but you still have a 2-year window of Tyler Lockett producing at least as a wide receiver 3, and me having him ranked as wide receiver 46. He's just barely making the top 4 wide receivers. That's enough production for me to keep him up there. He's still highly successful in his route running. Again, to bring up Matt Harmon's reception perception, love that tool. Highly suggest anybody to go get it if you are into looking into wide receiver success rates. He had a 82nd percentile in success rate against man coverage, an 80th percentile success rate against press coverage. That's where he's going to live. He needs to beat man in press being an outside wide receiver. He's not going to be pushed into the slot. That's going to be JSN's role. They still also have Noah Fant as a seam ripper. He's not going to be anything great, but he is still fast for a tight end. He's just going to be used in that type of sense of he can stretch the field from the tight end position. Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf is going to win on the outside, and that's all he needs to do. I see Geno Smith being extended. I see them adding JSN and a pass-catching running back, and to me, that tells me that this offense, they're going to continue to pass the ball. Let's see here. We got the Seattle Seahawks. They were 10th in passing yards last season, and they were 13th in terms of passing play percentage. They already threw the ball at a high percentage without JSN being added, without Zach Charbonnet being utilized as a pass-catching running back. And not a whole lot of – they saw Geno Smith in the preseason. They were confident enough to start him, but now they know Geno Smith can get the job done. So I believe that they put more effort behind them in the passing game, and they try to make a run for the NFC West.
Yeah. I see them staying true to their colors on running the ball a little bit more like they've done historically. I get last year was kind of like an outlier and they started to change directions potentially, but I don't see that being the case, especially with how much they just invested into the running back group as well. Not just adding Jackson Smith and Jigba, but they added
in the first round.
Yeah, they added him in the first round, which is smart for sure. But they definitely needed more help at wide receiver, I would say, too. Because Tyler Lockett is aging. He's not going to last forever, and he has been incredibly healthy throughout the way, and he does a great job to protect himself. But, not all great things can last forever. We hope it does. I'm a big fan of Tyler Lockett, too, and I probably should have him higher, but I don't want to hold the bag.
Well, I'm not a fan of Tyler Lockett because I'm a Niners fan, and I don't like Dan's comment making a push for the West. But no, I mean Lockett, I think in redraft is amazing this year. I would not avoid him at all in redraft, but Dynasty, DK and JSN are the guys of the future. And I mean, when you got two young guys like that, and Lockett's 30, I think. And then you got, your two running backs. You got Walker and then Charbonnet. But I might have said that wrong, but I always mess up his name too. But I think it's just kind of, I don't think they're necessarily wanting to get rid of the talent, but I think it just signs are showing the money and everything. It's about time for Lockett to be gone, which I'm glad. I'm tired of him torturing the Niners, but
I do agree that I usually look at a 3-year window, and I don't see a window bigger than 2 years max for Lockett, especially if they decide to move on from Geno. And I think the Seahawks are going to compete this year. If they get another quarterback after Geno, it's going to have to be through free agency or a trade, because I don't see them drafting high enough in next year's or the following year's draft in order to get one of those stud quarterbacks. So I do see what you're saying. It's not a large window, but I do think it's big enough at this point in our rankings to have him that high. All right, so this brings us to our last tier. We have Cedric Tillman, Michael Thomas, Marvin Mims Jr., Rondale Moore, Jacoby Myers, Sky Moore, Wan'Dale Robinson, Alan Lazard, Romeo Dobbs, and Tank Dell. That is from wide receiver 56 to 65. One player that we have in this tier that Mason does not is Cedric Tillman. I know I'm a big believer in Cedric Tillman. I am a Browns fan, so there's that. Evan, I know that you're a big believer in Cedric Tillman, but Mason, why do you see him outside of that tier 9 ranking?
I mean, I think their whole I don't know. The Browns are kind of feeling like they're playing for winning now. And I think Cooper is that guy. I mean, he's obviously their number one. They just traded for Elijah Moore, who, he was terrible last year, but that's because he didn't play. He didn't get the passing volume. Year one was explosive. And I think he was a mixture between him and Cooper. And then, Njoku, they just extended him, right? This last offseason?
Yeah, last year they extended him. He's got another 4 years on contract.
And so I think looking forward, they're going to take him as one of their main receivers. And if Moore does what he did his rookie season, I think he could easily evolve into that receiver of the future. And you got to think, how long is Cooper going to be there? Because, is Tillman going to just be that wide receiver 3? Maybe the talent's there, but is he going to sit behind Cooper, Moore, and Njoku, maybe even Donovan People-Jones? You never know. I don't see the play time being there. David Bell, I was so high up on him last year, and the play time just non-existent. It kills players when you got a very strong. They don't have the greatest core, but they got good guys ahead of him, so it's going to be a spot for him to earn.
Yeah, I'll jump in as the resident Browns fan here. I don't blame you. This is one of the few players that I have as highly ranked because of their future. Like you said, Cooper isn't going to be there incredibly long. He signed through the next 2 years. Definitely not going anywhere through 2 years because of the dead cap. But right now, Donovan Peoples-Jones is on his contract year. He's only going to be there most likely 1 year. I don't see them extending him. They have Elijah Moore, but he is like a traditional slot receiver. I don't see Tillman and Elijah Moore competing for the same type of snaps. And then arguably when they're used 12 personnel, which they like to do a lot, it's going to be Tillman on the outside, especially on running plays or play action heavy plays, because he's a bigger body guy that can block. I do think that he offers a skill set at 6'3" and 213 pounds that none of our other wide receivers have. Even Amari Cooper, he's a little bit shorter, not quite as thick. I think Tillman will be the red zone threat. Him and Njoku will be the two main red zone threats outside of obviously just running the ball up the gut with Nick Chubb. So I like Tillman a lot for his future, but I do agree with you that he might not have the biggest snap percentage in year one. Anything to add, Evan?
Yeah, I do agree that he's a future prospect for me too. That's why I have him valued up high too. I do think it's going to be too crowded for him to. I'm not expecting much out of him this year, but 2-3 years down the line, I think that there's potential for wide receiver one, and I'm all over that.
Yeah, right. He's the only wide receiver on the team with anything more than a contract through the next 2 years.
Yep.
Cooper signs through 2, DPJ through 1, and Elijah Moore, he's on the 3rd year of his rookie contract. Mm-hmm. He wasn't a first-round pick. So most likely, I don't see them bringing back DPJ. Like I said, Cooper, by that time, he's done. He's going to be plus 30 years old. So probably won't be brought back. But Tillman, I do believe, will be the long play there. If you have the patience to roster him on your Dynasty team, I think that he could end up paying off big in 2-3 years. All right. So with us running 16 minutes over as of right now, that brings us to our last bit of the show. Evan, you got that?
Yeah. So if you do like this show, you should also check out Fifth Down Territory. We're stopping for another ad segment here. Fifth Down Territory, which is Stadium Rant's live, relentless NFL coverage, starts every Tuesday at 8 o'clock. And we're talking, we got Lamb, the CEO over here, Bahuki, Shane, Louie. Those are some big names out there from Stadium Rant. And they're going to be debating, tossing, and hitting you with the impact block on a weekly basis. Unfiltered scorchers will be spoken, and parental supervision is advised. But yeah, with all that said, that concludes the first ever episode of the Fantasy Rant podcast. If you guys enjoyed the content, be sure to subscribe along the way, as we're going to be dropping episodes every Tuesday at 7 o'clock Eastern time.
Yes, from here on out, we will be 7 p.m. Thank you for staying up late with us. We appreciate you guys staying along with us for the ride.
Yeah.
All right.
Until next time.